Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream. Today we have Lasergun Factory, who's a new artist to crypto, on the stream. If you have any questions, just pop them in the chat as we go. If not, we'll cut this up into bite-sized chunks and make it kind of easy for people to watch later. So, first of all, it's really good to see you. How are you? How are things? Jason.
Yes.
Yes.
How you doing, man?
Good. So, we'll start where we always start, which is just kind of the basics of how did you get into art?
Well, when I was really young, we used to move around a lot. So I've lived all up and down the East Coast of the US. And basically we moved every couple of years just because of my father's work. He was kind of a manager for GM, and then he was a manager for a kind of a collection firm. So he was always going to various offices. So I was sort of always by myself. It was difficult to kind of keep friends. So I just started drawing a lot when I was young. And then my cousin, she sort of started teaching me a little bit when she was babysitting us, my sister and I. And just me watching her create was really beautiful. So it showed me that you could draw something else. Like I would try and draw little scribbly things or, just things around the house. But she would bring in these album covers and actually draw the album covers and then paint them. And it was just really wonderful. So that's probably my first real introduction into art is me trying and then watching somebody who actually could draw, do it. And then me attempting to copy that.
Okay, so that was you said your father worked for GM, so you were moving around a lot. Where were you kind of based?
Yeah, well, so I was born in New York, upstate New York. And then when I was just a baby, we moved down to Texas. And we were in Texas for a little while in Houston. And then probably up until elementary school, and then up to North Carolina for a few years. And then after that, Delaware is where I went to high school and college. And then after that, after I graduated from college, I ended up moving to New York City and started working as a graphic designer at a really small studio in Queens and then Manhattan.
Mm-hmm. And then, so how do you have much of an education? Do you kind of would you consider yourself to be more of an outsider artist in the fine art space, or would you consider yourself more kind of in the traditional sort of sense as an artist?
Well, originally I wanted to become a comic book artist. I was really into comic book art late in elementary school and middle school. And then high school, I don't know if you know this company, but Image Comics, I know they're still around, they're still huge. But it was actually a really big deal when I was in high school to see this little group of artists actually take over the whole scene. So you had Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, and Eric Larson, I guess, and there was a bunch of other guys. So who's the other guy? Liefeld was the other big guy. But those artists, it was like taking over a company from an artist's point of view rather than like a corporation looking down, and that to me was shocking and really just a cool thing to see. And so I wanted to be a comic book artist kind of like that, in that sense, that kind of punk rock attitude. We can take over the world with art. And I think that's what first got me into the idea of actually changing something with art.
Yeah.
So, money, not necessarily monetarily, but just the idea that you could actually draw something, you could actually create something, and it had a powerful voice, and it affected so many people because all of my friends, that's all we talked about was these artists at the time. So that was really cool.
So what led
Yeah.
you? What led you kind of? I mean, I guess you kind of slightly answered that with the graphics design, but what led you kind of into making digital art, and what kind of pushed you more in that
Uh,
direction?
yeah. Well, so later in high school, I didn't know what graphic design was. I was, so into the comic book world and just illustration. And I also loved concept art. So Sid Mead, obviously, Blade Runner, Tron, all that kind of stuff. Um, I was really into that. Heavy metal, so very illustrative kind of look. And
Kind of like album covers and vinyl covers, sort of things, with the heavy metal side of things.
yeah, album covers, vinyl, and then also I guess that's kind of got me into the music side of things. And then in high school, I started really listening to a lot of electronic music. I wasn't into, rock and roll so much, or I kind of got out of the hip hop stage, after Public Enemy and NWA and like these old school, groups that we used to listen to. But I started really getting into this experimental electronic music that was starting to really take shape after Detroit techno and Chicago house and all of that. And because I lived on the East Coast, they kind of had their own flavor.
Mm.
And I was in Delaware, which I lived in Dover, which was the capital of Delaware. And you could actually drive to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York. It was really easy access, like an hour and a half to any place you wanted to go, and started going to these techno parties. But what got me into that as well was the actual graphics, the flyers that we used to collect because we didn't have internet at the time. We had like a pager or something, some old school stuff like that. But I would just look at this artwork and it was fantastic. It was like music printed on a page, this kind of crazy world on this single piece of paper. And that sort of sucked me into the graphic design world. I thought that was amazing and powerful, how you could actually take artwork and give people this kind of world. And it just really interested me. And then music, that I was totally sold.
And
Wanted to become a graphic designer after that.
that's really cool. And then, so when that all kind of coalesced, what made you sort of decide that you were going to pursue that rather than the comic book side of things? Like you said that you originally kind of set out to be a comic book artist, and there's a lot of that. I've got some of your work on screen now. You can kind of see those influences in the series. But what kind of pushed you away from that, and what was the artists in the comic book space that inspired you to kind of originally strive to do that?
Well, originally, it was probably Todd McFarlane. I really loved his artwork. Very detailed, crazy inker as well. And then Liefeld was cool. Everybody makes fun of him, but he was definitely had his own style. And I guess Deadpool now everybody is kind of back on the Liefeld train. That was a very popular film, comic book film. And then I was into artists like Jay Lee as well. So it was kind of a balance between these a little more traditional artists that, penciled and then inked, kind of their style, but then you got Jay Lee, which is just crazy. And I thought when he first came out, he used really wild brush strokes. He would splatter ink on the page, and it wasn't clean, and I really liked that. And then also this kind of art that you're showing that's on BAE, it's a little influenced a bit, possibly by Jeff Darrow, which is another fantastic artist. If anybody hasn't seen his work, you really should. He's one of the original concept artists for the Matrix films, and just crazy wires and computers and sci-fi, cyberpunk kind of stuff. So he was a pretty big influence on me as well. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, to get, I guess to answer your other question, comic book art, while I loved it, I found that the graphic design was a little more accessible, and I started to work on a computer a little bit, and I found that it was just easier to work with like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. And I just started to be really attracted to that. And you could add type, you could tell a story, and I could do all of these things in one shot. And started getting into looking at commercials as well, like for Nike. I like the energy that those kind of branding stories told and brought to the table. And that's kind of the reason why I went in that direction, rather than sticking with superheroes and just drawing, a hero doing something. I could kind of spread the love of design out with graphic design.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons why I went in that direction.
And then what kind of year did you start doing graphic design? Like whenabouts was that you started doing it kind of on the professional level?
Professionally, it was 2000. So I moved to New York in 2000, and I hardly had any work to show. It was like basically a fake portfolio. And I ended up meeting this group. It was called Flight. It was this little studio, and there was only like 4 or 5 people working there, but they had a massive client. It was Reebok. And these guys were the ones who put together all of the pitch decks for Reebok. They would connect with the bigger ad agencies around New York and Boston. Reebok is actually based around Boston. And I ended up going in because they like some of these fake rave flyers that I created, and some of these just crazy graphics that I was sort of experimenting with at the time. And from there it was sports fashion. So we did a lot of Reebok stuff. And then we got into album covers, and working with, music distributors around New York, especially. So some hip hop, electronic, rock, any kind of rock and roll type stuff. And then a little more into later in the company.
Are there any bands that you kind of were kind of seriously big that you designed work for? Because you said you worked for Reebok, so you've worked with some quite major labels.
Yeah, the only record that's probably the most famous, and it's not my finest work, and I never really tell anybody about it. So maybe you can edit this, but
oh no, we're live.
I know it's live, but basically I did the Bone Thugs and Harmony greatest hits cover. So, but literally it's just typography, gray background, very simple. So we would get projects like that, but we never really pushed ourselves as a studio. And the work that we did with companies like Reebok, it was really, we did some advertising that was people might have seen, but a lot of it was this behind the scenes kind of crazy art pitching, and we would work for companies like I don't know if you've ever heard of A Life. They sell, it's like underground sort of street culture. They would sell, you know, $1,000 Nikes or something. And so we would work with boutiques like that at the time in the early 2000s, when it was very popular to have this sort of underground street culture.
Yeah.
And so, you know, getting into that, and then like places like Kid Robot, you may have heard of.
Yeah.
That is when my mind started veering towards special edition type work, which is very similar to crypto.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit. The next question was kind of what inspires your work. I think we've covered that, and the and how rave culture kind of impacted it as well. So the next question is, this series is called the Lovecraft series that we have on the BAE, and there's a lot more on there. It's featured on the homepage at the moment at mybae.io. Those are the images that you see popping up. Why Lovecraft, and is there any particular reason that his work is, the series is named after him? And it's very kind of it's almost, it's like kind of cyber horror, dark, I guess, if I was kind of put three random adjectives onto it. But right. What is the kind of influences, would be for this series in particular?
Well, for the last few years, a lot of the work that I do, besides the branding work, it's always has to do with technology. And I'm just always exploring this connection between society and technology. And for this particular series, I happen to love cosmic horror.
Yeah.
And sort of, you know, that kind of sci-fi stuff. And so Alien, you know, all these different kinds of movies that came out back in the day, like David Cronenberg's Videodrome, especially. And
kind of the technological biomorphosis sort of like thing.
Yeah, biomorphosis, exactly.
I've got Demon on page, and it does actually, it has a lot of kind of H.R. Geiger. Now I'm looking at it more. It's very kind of in that sort of realm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Geiger, the Prince of Darkness, it's an old Carpenter film. You know, and those kind of films really affected me as well. Like, besides the drawings, I would also watch a ton of film. Like, I'm really into film. And so these pieces kind of represent that idea where people, you know, as humans, we try to use technology in a way to expand ourselves. And sometimes it's not good. As we can see, you know, and so if you want to look at this as kind of a representation of, say, social media or something, just look at what's happened with social media in the past, you know, 5 to 10 years. It's really affected our lives, and it's part of our lives now. Like, everybody has to deal with this, and it's just, it can be positive or it can be negative. And a lot of the times the negative stuff is what sort of floats up to the top. And this was kind of a little bit of me thinking in that Lovecraftian ethos, that kind of way, to see technology as a doorway that opens up into these dark things that we usually don't want to talk about and don't want to think about. And so that's what this art sort of represents in that Lovecraft direction.
Yeah. Okay. So the idea of the kind of artwork is, I guess, from what I can gather, is like it's almost showing the duality of technology and trying to kind of express that into a visual medium. And is there anything else in particular about like, so the Lovecraft and the cosmic horror? Is there any particular Lovecraft stories that kind of inspired you to create this, or is it just kind of generally the whole kind of ethos of the, I guess, not being able to, because you do quite a good job, I mean an incredible job of creating artwork that does represent that cosmic horror, which is very, very few artists kind of manage to nail that that sort of idea of infinity. Are there any particular stories that inspired you while making it, or is it just kind of the general ethos of cosmic horror?
I would say the general ethos, but there are a few films that they've obviously, like I said, Videodrome is one. I don't know if you could consider that so much Lovecraft, but it's definitely the technology and society coming together. The Beyond is a great film, an old '80s horror film. In the Mouth of Madness,
Yeah.
that's a great one. And then, like Reanimator, that's another.
So kind of
kind of
just within the sort of universe that Lovecraft, the extended universe of Lovecraft, is
Yeah,
kind of yeah.
definitely.
That's so. How did you? So let's get into kind of. Want to talk about a little bit about your other series, the Totem series in particular, and unfortunately I don't have one up here, but the idea behind that is kind of imprints of the mind, from what I understand, right?
Yes. So totems. I'm gonna pop over the.
Yeah, pop one over, and while you do, perfect.
So totems was
And that's
basically when I work on a project. Yeah, I don't know if you can pop open the link.
Yeah, perfect.
But basically, when I work on, I'm a huge believer in, obviously commercial work is important, and it pays the bills, and you have to focus on it and do it. But I think it's even more important to work on your own personal work
Yeah.
and keep practicing and keep testing. And this happened to be one of these projects that I just did for the hell of it. And I was essentially testing the iPad in Procreate to draw. Because at one point I was working on so much design work and just layout, I wasn't drawing that much anymore. A hell of a lot less than I did when I was in high school and first moved to New York. And so I wanted to get back into just drawing from the mind and seeing what I could come up with. And I love the symmetry feature on Procreate.
Okay.
I thought it was amazing. Just you could draw something and everything sort of turns into this really beautiful pattern. And I started to see these interesting shapes in the Totem series. And I thought they look like totems. I didn't name it that at first, but then I started looking at them.
Do you mean kind of by totem? Do you mean the Native American sort of interpretation, or yeah?
Yeah, Native American and the Japanese native up north as well. All over. Basically, totem, the representation of the human in this kind of organic shape. Either through animal shape, or this is just graphic. But what I thought, I'm always kind of dipping into technology, and I thought it would be interesting if there was some sort of neurotransfer system to actually project these totems, and it would almost be like a fingerprint, because the image that's actually created from someone's mind through some sort of coding, it would be very, very distinct, and no one would have the same totem.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was interesting. And
And
this is, yeah,
is this when you
please.
sorry, you have the rotating kind of animated woman with the totem popping up in front of her face? Is that kind of
Yeah,
the concept there with the idea of it being an imprint of a person's mind?
yeah, exactly. So while imagine her talking to you, just uh, online or something, and you can actually see this shape, and rather than it being pre-designed, like say Spark from Spark AR or something, it would be this totally organic experience, and it would literally change as the emotions are passing through. But it would be that from specifically from that individual, and it could be used. It's just a future sort of future thinking technology. It could be for security, it could be for art, it could be for anything. And it's just one of these ideas that I played around with, and it became an interesting art project as I thought about it.
Mm. No, I think it's really really cool. It's so these were all created. So we were kind of playing on the iPad, and then it evolved into this kind of concept of um, the unique kind of identifier of a person.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it would be really cool. Like just anybody, everybody's would look so different. I mean, I can't even imagine. It's almost like I don't know if you've ever seen those mood rings or like
Yeah.
the mood stones where they change color, and so everybody has kind of a different mood and aura.
Yeah.
This is kind of the digital representation of that aura. And I mean, there's companies like this Spark Neuro that already measure, uh, your beta or gamma waves or something in
Yeah.
your mind, and you can actually control the mouse on your computer, and you can make it pick up a glass or something. But this would be a more emotional kind of program
Yeah.
to plug in. So
And I guess that
maybe one day it's we can develop it. We'll see.
yeah, definitely. I think this is really interesting. I think this is a cool way of doing it. So I mean that also brings me back to the other question I asked earlier. Is a lot of artists would put themselves into one category of kind of either fine art or commission based work and concept pieces. Which
Yeah.
part would you find yourself on, and would you kind of see that vertical is kind of being collapsed recently, or what would you see as the kind of challenges to an artist when they're starting out, whether they wanted to decide, because obviously there used to be the choice of, if you picked you were going to go fine art all the way, you're going to find it very hard to make a living, but once you do, or if you do make it big, it's going to be quite a lot more rewarding. Whereas taking the
Yeah.
route of maybe concept or design, you're playing it a little safer. It's still risky, but what would you say is kind of, how would you see yourself as an artist? Would you put yourself into one of those categories, or would you see yourself more kind of being able to move in between?
I think, well, it's always been a difficult question for me to answer. So I think because I come from a almost illustrative background, the comics and just the concept art kind of work, um, and and then getting into graphic design just for fun and crazy visuals that you wouldn't really sell, um, you know, in the early 2000s. But uh, then I was able to take that energy and infuse it into commercial work. And so I've always teetered in that space, I guess, since the beginning of my professional career. But I've always tried to keep a separation from the brand work
Yeah.
and my own work. But at the same time, in the brand work, I definitely try and add my voice, and I really try to do something that I want to do, and I'll fight for it. Sometimes I lose the battle, but if there's a way that I can add my own creative voice and visual to something, it doesn't matter what brand it is. I think that's a good direction to go in. If you're thinking about doing commercial work, the brand is the brand and the client is the client, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why they're talking to you as an artist and a designer. You're the one who has this creative energy. You're the one who has that ability to express yourself and use that ability to help them express themselves.
Yeah.
So, in a way, that's where I've always thought I've been, I guess. So
that's actually, I guess, a good little kind of nugget of advice for people is you would say that it's important that you always kind of push for your vision and don't let people kind of, even in conceptual work, because I think there's a lot of people who work in conceptual work who feel maybe a little creatively stifled. And how would you would suggest that you always kind of make sure you push to push through your vision? Is that the right way of kind of looking at it?
Well, I think it's good to push your vision. I mean, the thing is, this is where you kind of have to really think about it. You just have to be very wary of the client's just their sensibility and your sensibilities, and their main goal is to maybe sell a product. So for instance, I used to work for Reebok, so they just wanted to sell footwear, but they wanted to make this shoe that a million other people can sell. They wanted to make it interesting, and so they wanted that creative energy to push that and tell a deeper story and a more interesting creative story. And so I think when you're an artist, you have that ability to help them sell these products or whatever it is they want to sell. And it's just, don't lose yourself and don't always agree with the people that you're working for, especially if you're young. But you do have to kind of be very cautious. You don't want to come in with a chip on your shoulder and think that you're amazing, because the other thing through the years I've learned myself is, a lot of these brands, they might actually know what they want to say, but they're just not exactly sure how to say it in an interesting way. Yeah. And so that's where you can come in and help them. So just be chill, but definitely try and express yourself and use your talents wisely, I guess I would say.
Yeah. So I've got on the screen now, is this, I kind of clicked around your website and I found the Mitsubishi link. So what was the involvement with here? Is this kind of more on the graphic design sort of side or the movie making side? So you seem like you're quite multifaceted. So what was the kind of involvement?
Yeah. So this one, I basically I worked with a creative director. I forget which agency it was. He's here in Japan though. And Mitsubishi, what they were doing here was launching a website for stories that they had recorded. And so they call them stories, but basically they're little brand stories, like if Mitsubishi Electric helped with a heating system in a small village or something, or a water system somewhere, in like another country, like a third world country or something. And so they basically filmed these little brand stories, and they were launching a site. And so what they wanted was a video that talked about this particular website where you could view those stories.
Okay, cool.
So it was
And
basically a branding. It was a
yeah,
branding exercise.
it's very sorry. Your website is fantastic to click around on. It's kind of it's
Oh,
really
thanks,
beautifully
man.
designed. I love the way that it's laid out. So moving back onto to track on the questions. So how did you find out about crypto art?
Wow. So crypto art is crazy, man. I'm still learning. And a big shout out to BAE
Thank
for
you.
helping me learn. So um, basically, I started doing the illustrations on iPad because I had a brand project. I had to draw some illustrations for Chanel, and I wanted to make my process a little faster because I had to actually get some artwork to them, by a certain time. And so I was using the illustration skills on the iPad. Boom, it's digital. I didn't have to do anything, scan in art or anything like that. And I could just send them the digital pieces, and then they could put them wherever they needed to put them, use them for whatever purpose it was. And from there, I started doing my own art because I wanted to explore. I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm getting back into drawing. And then I started posting these on, I guess, Instagram.
Yeah.
And,
And these are the kind of comic booky sort of Lovecraftian ones you're talking about now, or is that?
yeah, the
Yeah.
Lovecraft. And I think some of the stuff before, but
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly which ones. I mean, I try and post. That's the other thing is like I think digital art, it's so easy to get it out into the world. Sometimes it's a little too easy.
Yeah.
But anyhow, getting back to your question, someone from Maker's Place contacted me, which is another
Yeah.
crypto art site. And they just asked if I wanted to put some artwork on the site. And so they were the first kind of spot that I realized you could actually sell digital art. I thought it was insane. I still think it's a little insane, but
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. But that was my first real introduction was that particular site.
Yeah. And then, so when you kind of came to BAE, the series that you're doing now, the Lovecraft series, it was when you created that, you were just kind of exploring and having fun. We covered it a little bit, but I just kind of wanted to kind of get the inspiration. Was it for any purpose, or was it just kind of out of enjoyment? Was there anything at that moment that kind of inspired that?
I think it's, I was trying to push myself, to draw a little more. And so I started thinking about this Lovecraft, just the way and these kind of machines that could, take your consciousness and throw them out into the cosmic universe. This kind of wild, weird sci-fi idea. And I just started pumping them out,
Yeah.
thinking about the Tibetan Book of the Dead was also an inspiration. These kind of, when somebody dies, there's steps to that death. And so it's like you kind of go on this cosmic journey. And so I just started doing them just on the iPad. And then, that's how that series became
Okay.
or came to be.
So, and then the other question I had was, actually, sorry, we've got a question in the chat. Is what is your favorite piece of artwork that you've ever produced?
That's tough. The artwork to me, it's almost like I don't know if anybody has the same idea, but like I don't have a tattoo because I can't decide what to get, and I think if I actually did put something solid down, I would hate it in another week.
Yeah.
So there's pieces that I really enjoy, and there's pieces that I I don't enjoy that much anymore, but I still think I got what I wanted to get out of it,
Yeah.
whether it's educating myself on the process or, I just wanted to try something interesting. Um, so yeah, probably a lot of the stuff on uh, Laser Gun Factory is cool. I'm really into motion design,
Yeah.
and there's a video on there called Form that I'm
Let me
pretty
see.
proud of. I actually liked.
I've got float and social distance and social distance on there. I'm not sure if it's the same one, but yeah, you do a little bit of GIF work as well. What program do you use
Yeah.
to create that? People are always interested in finding new ways of doing it. Do you make it in Photoshop
Mm.
or do you use a specific program for the GIFs?
The gifts are, well, the very simple gifts. There's three pieces on BAE.
Yeah.
Um, those are actually done all in Procreate.
Okay.
Um, and then you can bring them into Photoshop as well. Um, but yeah, I try and mix whatever medium I happen to like at the time because I do a little 3D work as well. And so it's like just mixing and matching whatever elements work together. Um, so yeah, those pieces were all in Procreate though, which is fantastic. If anybody hasn't had the chance to use that program, you really should. It's really cool. So
Definitely. And
very easy, intuitive.
what I've got here is I've actually I don't know if it comes with sound. Oh, I muted that. I've got the kind of drawing process at the moment up of the Lovecraft works, and that's really cool to
Ah,
see. So I've kind of got that going through, and this is all on the iPad. Did you say?
yeah.
Yeah.
The Lovecraft is all iPad. Um, this is a cool feature. If you draw something, it actually records your time drawing. So you can export a time lapse, and so that's the other thing. It's really nice to see your own process and your own thought process as you're drawing it. Like where do
Yeah.
you go? How do you start? What do you do? The coloring that you use, and then you can obviously take this kind of stuff and bring it into something like After Effects and do some even crazier stuff with it. So I love all of these digital mediums, how they're interchangeable.
Yeah.
Um, that's one of the reasons why I've been sticking to digital. Because once you draw something on paper, it's sort of set almost in stone, unless you want to go backwards and almost destroy it to get it back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Digital is always kind of evolving in this way. It's an interesting medium to work in. So
And is there anything else that you want to add? Like, I know you're working on an interesting project with poems. I don't know if you want to talk about that too much, but is there anything else that you kind of want to add to the conversation before we wrap it up?
yeah, well, hopefully I'll have some more artwork to release soon. Right now I'm finishing up a project from this little zine in Tokyo. Um, it's for COVID-19. Obviously everybody is dealing with this kind of situation, and I really tried to take advantage of the situation and just keep creating while I'm stuck in the apartment. And so I'm working on something I'll hopefully be able to send to you, man,
Oh no,
pretty
awesome.
soon, called Robot Matsuri. Um, and it's basically all the people had to stay in their homes. And so we had to kind of watch robots do all of the things that we as people used to do. So it's kind of a fun, just a print project. But I'll hopefully have that to share pretty soon as well. But
Awesome.
dude, I absolutely appreciate it, and I have to say this crypto art is it's really amazing. It's really taking off, and there's some phenomenal artists that are just coming out now, and it's just wonderful to see
See,
this
it's
thing
kind of like
grow.
a explosion of new creativity. There hasn't really been one for a
It's
while, and
insane.
it's great to see kind of people, I mean, I guess it's like almost an influx of, if anyone wants to be an artist now, it's you can reach a global community of investors just by uploading your work. It's kind of crazy. I don't think there's
Absolutely.
ever been an opportunity like that. It's almost strange how perfect the timing has been between crypto art and what's happened in the world. It's lucky that it
It's
was here.
happening, man.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, and if anybody wants to reach out, if you have any other questions or you just want to connect, I love to connect with other artists and collectors. So, send a note to Sasha or send a note to myself. It's just at Jason Scuderi is the Instagram.
Oh yes, shout out
And
all
so
your
maybe
socials.
Yeah, it's basically at Jason Scuderi is the Instagram, and then if anybody wants to check out some commercial stuff, it's Laser Gun Factory, and then hopefully we'll be able to chat again soon about this poetry coding project. It's still under a little wrap, but we're working on it, and we're gonna pop that out as well. So very, very exciting stuff. So anyways, thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
No, that's okay. And if anyone wants to pick up one of Jason's work, one's already sold. They're on mybae.io. You can catch all the new ones on the front page, and then under his profile page, there is a bunch of other ones, and hopefully we'll get some more from the Lovecraft series soon. I'm just looking at these time lapses. Are fantastic.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Next week, we're going to put together a kind of sort of video of the time lapses, along with some BAE sort of updates. So we will see you shortly. Thank you so